Okay, woohoo, going live for the third time today. That's good. Entering Mashiach's days when we're going to be learning Torah all the time. So here tonight, I'm going to complete unfinished business. This has been on Lag Bomer, which is a month ago. Yeah, it's the 18th day of Siva now. Lag Bomer was the 18th day of ER. We learned an all-night class. It was called Kabbalathon. That was just to entice the people that usually don't come. But we do Kabbalathon all the time, every Thursday night. We taught for about 3.5 hours a discourse called in Pashas Behar as Shabsosei Tishmoiru. And then came, I was away, and the following week, I learned the second part. We didn't finish it, and I learned the second part. Then we were interrupted by Shavuot, so I couldn't teach. I was planning to teach this Thursday night. I was out of town last week, but I ended up giving the Key to Redemption class, and I was just wiped out, and I couldn't do this one afterwards. And now, so this Wednesday, now tonight, I want to complete this class so that tomorrow night, Thursday, we can start a new discourse. That's the plan. So there were 2 classes before this. Don't be surprised if you don't get it, if you don't learn or listen to those 5 hours of study before, because this is a continuation. So ready? Here we go. We were learning about the power of Shabbos. The verse says, my Shabbos is you should observe. It's not a verse now, it's a Leviticus in Vayikra. My Shabbos in Pashas Behar, I don't remember which chapter it is. Let's take a look. It's open before over here. Not exactly sure which verse it is. In any case, in Vayikra, in the Pashas Behar, it says, it's the last verse in the second to the last Torah portion in Behar. It says, if Shabsosei Tishmoiru, my Shabbos is you should observe. Ve'es Mikdash, I am my sanctuary, Tira'u, you should fear. Ani Hashem, I am Hashem. So we were learning the idea why it says Es Shabsosei, the Shabbos is. So we had a long discussion on the concept of Shabbos. The idea of Shabbos is that there is Aliyah Sa'olamos, all the worlds, every level ascends into a higher level, higher and higher and higher. And mainly, we discussed that creation, the difference between the lower Shabbos and the higher Shabbos. In every Shabbos, there is 2 Shabboses, the lower Shabbos and the higher Shabbos, but more in specific, the lower Shabbos is that the creations are elevated into the divine, into Atzilus, and the higher Shabbos is that the realms of divinity that are post-Tzimtzum, which means the emanations of God that have emanated after the primordial contraction, where God hid his essential true light. All those levels ascend and connect to what was before the Tzimtzum. They go up and they tap the Or Ein Sof Shalifnei Tzimtzum, which it means the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light that's before the contraction. So if you just to give you a little trigger to the mind, we then discussed how all of creation is created by God's names, and we discussed the idea that names are letters, and the reason why we refer to the creation as names, as God's names, because the idea of letters, osios, letters, represent the diminishment of a concept of something to the least and to the most tiniest leftover. Something left over, but it's very, very insignificant. Like we see, but the words, if you have an idea, the words that constitute the idea, that's when you speak any concept, any idea, and you say it in words. Generally, you would say the words are very important idea. The words are very much part of the concept of the idea. But we learned that it's not really that case. How do you see that it's not really that case? We see this from the fact that a person can extrapolate a concept from words is only if they themselves have an intelligence. And their intelligence has to be somewhat equal or similar to the intelligence of the one who conceived the idea and put it into these words. Then, by these words being written down, And then I can read these words. And then I can, from the words, I can deduce, extract the concept that's in it. But if you take a little child, let's say, who's very well at ABC, literally can know ABC really great. Maybe one of that, they even learned how to read. And you give them some paper, some site from a scientific journal, from some great scientist, physicist, or someone, and you have all kinds of formulas and all kinds of things over there. And let's say this kid can memorize pages, but they have absolutely no idea what the content is. So there is something there of what is the fact that they have the memory of the words. There's something there, but all there is words. So you have zero, literally nothing of the concept of the idea behind it. That's how God, when He creates the Or Ein Sof, lowers itself down to words. All there is left is words, the names of God's, the letters. And we discussed that within the letters, what's left over. God doesn't create from the Aleph. Aleph is the first letter. He doesn't create from the Beis. He doesn't create from the Gimel. These are all, levels and levels of letters. God reduces it down to the last and final letter, which is the Taf, the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And from the Taf is where all the worlds that are post-Tzimtzum, which means all the levels, from the highest, even the levels, what we call Ancient of Days. The Taf becomes the Atik. That's what he says. It becomes the Atik for Adam Kadmon. It becomes the crown of Adam Kadmon. And then so is also lower, that the Taf from Adam Kadmon, from primordial man, becomes the Atik to the next world, which means that everything is reduced down to letters. And which means that anything lower is totally cut off, totally cut. So the Chiddush, the novelty over here in the Aliyah, the elevation of Shabbos, of the higher Shabbos, is that we rise outside of the entire thread. This little bit of light that comes, that then is introduced post these tiny letters, is just a tiny little thread of light. And we pass all this thread and these letters and reach into the Or Ein Sof. That's Shabbos. However, we learned in the last class that type of holiness and godliness of Shabbos is so high that until Mashiach comes, when we're going to have the Yom Shekulei Shabbos, the day that's completely Shabbos, like we discussed in yesterday's class, that Shabbos is connected to the future. Episode 6 of Kita Redemption, class number 4, we discussed how Shabbos is all futuristic. So now when we experience this light, and we're journeying in through this elevation. Now these lights remain makif, which means we're touching them, but we're touching them in a way that it's not being revealed in our internal consciousness. The holiness is upon us, but it's still above us. However, when Mashiach comes, this will be revealed. This awesome revelation. That's the kind of the idea that we were learning till now. I mean, we spent 5 hours on that, so there's a whole lot of information. Now we're holding in Likutei Torah by V'hinei l'chayre tzarech iyun. Now it needs some more. I mean, the truth is, I said I'm teaching from a copy. Let me go get the book so that I can tell you exactly, for those who want to look at the book, where and which line and which page this is. So just bear with me one moment. Behar. Here we are. So where we are holding right now is on Daf Mem Daled, Amid Gimel. The bottom, the third column of Mem Daled. It's actually page 88 in Likutei Torah. And we're holding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines before the end of the first column on page 88. Daf Mem Daled Amid Gimel. Now we need to, if you remember, the last thing we learned was that in order for us to be able to have such an elevation in the future, to go so high, we're going to have to be consumed by the souls that are going to be revealed after Mashiach comes. We're going to be eaten. And we then discussed that it means that only a little spark of us gets processed, but that elevates us into levels, into consciousness, into expansivity that is unimaginable. And then we'll be able to absorb and feel the holiness of Shabbos. And by the way, that's why he said, it says Shabsosei. Hashem calls it my Shabbos. It's not yours. It's higher than you. Also, Tishmaru, you can't, you don't, all you can do is, you can't do anything to create the Shabbos. Shabbos is way above you. Can't stimulate it. It's so high. It's so beyond. But all you can do is watch yourself not to do something that will contradict it. That if we, chas v'shalom, God forbid, are in violation of Shabbos, we're not allowing ourselves to be elevated into this elevation. So you just observe. And he also explained that it doesn't only mean violations of Shabbos. All week long, we should be thinking about, I better not do anything during the week that might ruin Shabbos. Will not allow my soul to enter the elevator, the great elevation where the souls enter and ascend on Shabbos. Another meaning to the word Tishmeru, he says, just like someone guarding something, the person that's guarding is on the outside of the thing that is being guarded. So to Shabbos, because it's something that we, at this point, we cannot in any way internalize it, for that its holiness is so great. For that reason, we use the idea of guarding, which represents the idea that there is a relationship of something guarding from the outside. Now we ask a question. We've just explained that at least the higher Shabbos is such a high elevation that even Adam Kadmon, even primordial man, which is a level of existence where all the attributes and all the worlds are all contained in it as one. It is so high that it's the general initial sketch of existence, which includes all of existence together, and everything is equal over there, because it is not yet in any way formulated and contracted and divided, and it's still in its most abstraction of abstraction of abstraction. And that is so high. Yet we're saying that Shabbos is the elevation even from Adam Kadmon into pre-Adam Kadmon, which means pre-Tzimtzum. Shagam Ak, that even Adam Kadmon Oile ascends. So that needs to be understood. How do we reconcile this with what it says in the Maimer Lamatzeach Alashminas? There's another Maimer we once learned. The Adam Kadmon, which is a Maimer in Pashas Lech Lecha. No, not in Pashas Lech Lecha, Pashas Shmini. The Adam Kadmon Ulamaylam Aliyas to Shabbos, where over there he explains that Adam Kadmon is higher than the elevations of Shabbos. It's associated with number 8. Shabbos is number 7, the 7th day. And this is a number related to number 8. That's why Bris Milah is on the 8th day, which Bris Milah pushes away Shabbos because it's holier than Shabbos. And in that Maimer, he associated the loftiness of the Bris Milah, of the covenant of the circumcision, that taps the energy of Adam Kadmon, which is beyond Shabbos. And now we're saying, no, that Adam Kadmon is included in what is being elevated in Shabbos. Ayin Shah, Ach Be'emes, however, in truth, that seems to contradict what we're learning over here. Loi Kashem Idiot, there's no problem. If you're asking already about Adam Kadmon, we can ask of something even greater, meaning we have even a greater contradiction to this. Adam Kadmon, even in our talk that we're learning over here, we're saying that Adam Kadmon is at the very, very, very highest level that Shabbos is affecting. That Shabbos is affecting even Adam Kadmon. It's definitely affecting and elevating all the attributes and all the layers and all the levels below Adam Kadmon. Right? They're definitely. Yet we find that at times we say that even Bina, which is in the world of Atzilus, which is way, way, way inferior. Atzilus, we learned already, is called, from the greater perspective, Atzilus is called, which our Atzilus, our world of emanation, is called Olam Asiyah. It's called the world of completion, which means the lowest level. when we're looking at the general. I know I'm not going, this class is not meant to be understood on its own. Please forgive me. I can't go over all the ideas. It's something we've discussed earlier. So I'm referencing you back to those classes before you learn this again. In any case, in that case, the entire Atzilus is called Asiya, is a low. Yet we say that, so therefore it's definitely part of the Shabbos elevation. Yet we say that Bina is higher than Shabbos. And that's why we say by a bris milah that Bina is related to number 8. It's the 8th attribute going from the bottom up. Bina is the 8th attribute. And it's beyond Shabbos. So that contradicts even more what we are saying over here, that Shabbos affects the entire cosmic order. As he says, that even Bina is beyond Shabbos. Where do we see that? When it comes to the counting of the Omer, which we completed a few weeks ago by Shavuos, what we do is a 49-day count, which is 7 times 7. And then it says over there, you should count from the morrow of the Shabbos. Simply it means from the day after Passover. The day after Shabbos we count. But in Hasidism it explains that this means that you should draw the illumination that you're drawing down on during your counting, the counting of the Omer, is from a level that transcends Shabbos. It's holier than Shabbos. And that's what it means, the morrow of the Shabbos, what's after Shabbos, which means above Shabbos, what encircles Shabbos. And we explained that's Bina. You draw down the lights of Bina during Sfiras Omer. You're drawing it into the 7 emotions. Bina is the mother of the 7 emotions, so you're drawing energy from the mother to the children, to the emotions. And that's how you're illuminating the emotions. It's higher than Shabbos. Now, where is Shabbos? If Bina is above Shabbos, so spiritually, the holiness of Shabbos depends. There's 2 levels that we said. There's 2 Shabboses, Shabbos day and Shabbos night. Shabbos night is a feminine Shabbos. There's a lower Shabbos, and Shabbos day is a masculine Shabbos, which is a higher Shabbos. So it is explained. Shabbos day, Shabbos evening, Friday night. The lower Shabbos is the holiness of Malchus, of kingship. Is the Shabbos the queen, and all the lower worlds ascend higher into Malchut, into a revelation of Malchus. That's why it's called Shabbos the queen. And Shabbos day, the elevation is that Malchus, the queen, gets elevated into her husband, which is called the Ze'er Anpin, the 6 emotions. And that's the 2 levels of Shabbos. Bina, which Bina is the mother of the son and the daughter, which is the masculine and the feminine. Bina is called the morrow of the Shabbos. So that is a greater contradiction to what we're saying here, that Shabbos really, the roots of Shabbos go so much higher, all the way up, way beyond Bina, way beyond even Keser, Erech Anpin, way beyond even Atik Yom, and even higher. It affects even Adam Kadmon, primordial man, which between these levels is vast, infinite separations. So how does it work? How do you reconcile? Ki Shabbos the Laila, the Shabbos of the Yom, the Shabbat of the Laila, the Shabbos of by night, the Shabbos of the day. Hemzun, they are male and female. Zucher and Ukva, the 6 emotions and Malchus. Ubino Lamayla Mazam, Bina is higher. Ubamaka Matzinu Bizoyar, and in other places it says in Zohar, the Shabbos Ubina. Now he says the contradiction is not to us, the contradiction is to the Zohar. The Zohar, we usually say that Bina is called the morrow of the Shabbos. And yet it says in other places, in Zohar, it states that the holiness of Shabbos is Bina. And Bina is called Shabbos. As the states in Zohar, the mother is called Shabbos, Bina is called Shabbos. Elavadai, we have to say, it's depending on which level of Shabbos we're talking about. There is a level of Shabbos where Shabbos is only the lowest element of Shabbos, where Shabbos is only Malchus. The night Shabbos and the day Shabbos are the 6 emotions. And then Bina is above Shabbos, on that dimension of Shabbos. But there is a much higher Shabbos, like we learned, which Bina is part of the elevation of Shabbos, and even much higher than Bina is part of the elevation. Like we learned earlier, remember we learned that the sabbatical year, Shemitah, is a type of Shabbos, but it's not as holy as the day of Shabbos. That's why we're allowed to do work, we're just not allowed to do agricultural work. But we learned, right? You have to say, in Shabbos, there's many levels in Shabbos. Sheyesh b'chinas b'Shabbos. There is that level in Shabbos. Shebina nikra legabe b'chinas u'machras Shabbos. There is a lower level of Shabbos, which Bina is called the about ordinary Shabbos. But Yesh b'chinas b'Shabbos, but there is a higher Shabbos, shenikra Shabbos Shabsosei, which is called a complete resting. The Torah doesn't just say Shabbos. The Torah says Shabbos Shabsosei, a Shabbos of Shabbos. Oh, that kind of Shabbos is much higher. That is Bina. Shabbos, regular Shabbos is Malchus and Zeiranpin. Night Shabbos and day Shabbos. Bina is above it. When it says Shabbos Shabbos, and that's what the Zohar means, that's when Bina is Shabbos. This is the way it applies in a more specific range. Ba'atzilus. In the world of Atzilus, we identify Shabbos, a regular Shabbos in the lower Sfirot, and Bina is considered the Shabbos Shabbosing. Now we can take the same concept and apply it to the macro. Yuvan b'klalas ha'olam is when we look in the generality of all worlds. Sheyesh b'chinas b'Shabbos shelagabizu nikra adam kadmon lamaylam aliyas Shabbos. There are levels of Shabbos where adam kadmon is considered, primordial man is considered above the Shabbos experience. Yesh oid b'chinas Shabbos, then there is even a higher level of Shabbos. Sheshayach gam ba'ak, it's shayach, it applies even in Adam Kadman. Commission is bar, like we said earlier, we learned it in the discourse Shabbos Nemar Beis Bechinos, that in Shabbos it says two things. Sometimes it says God rested Mikol Malachta from all the work Asher bara that He created, and then it says Mikol Malachta that Hashem rested from all the work Asher Asa that He made. And we explained, we're not going through this again now, that his rising from what he made is considered a much lower rising, extraction and rising and returning into himself than when he rises from what he created. Creation is much higher than making. The made world is a much lower level. So there's one level of Shabbos is that he retracts. And when he retracts his energy, it means, as we discussed earlier, the creations come along, at least the internal elements of creation come along in that retraction, which means they're elevated to a much higher level. But where is he retracting from? Only from what he made, not from what he created. But there's a higher level of Shabbos where he's contracting, he's retracting, retracing his steps from what he created, which means he's going out above the realm of Bria and going completely into Atzilus. And in this case, Atzilus means, what does Atzilus mean on the highest level? The Or Ein Sof, the infinite light that's before the first contraction. Also, that the lower level of Shabbos, the Shabbos where Hashem is resting from everything that He made, is referring to Adam Datzilus. It's referring to the man of Atzilus. Which when we look at the entire system as one, we're not zooming in on our solar system. I'm using solar system as an example of an existence that exists kind of as a world for itself, but it's only a little tiny speck in a much greater system. So here also, when we speak of our four worlds, Atzilus, Bri, Yatzir, and Asiya, we're talking about our particular Atzilus, Bri, Yatzir, and Asiya. So in that, Atzilus is called Atzilus, right? But when we analyze the entire system, even our Atzilus is called Asiya. It's called action. And as you learned, the world of Nikudim, Akudim and Nikudim, Akudim and Nikudim, which is higher than Atzilus. They are Yetzira, Olam HaYetzira, and then Adam Kadmon, which is even higher than that, is called Olam HaBriya. And what's Atzilus from this perspective? The Or Ein Sof, that's before the Tzimtzum, before the contraction. So he says, therefore, when it says Mikol Malach Hashem also, that Hashem retracts from all the work that He made on the greater scale, that means Hashem is elevating Himself from the Sfirot, from the attributes of Atzilus. He's pulling out, he's ascending into Himself from lowering Himself down into Atzilus, which is really Asiya when we look at the from the entire picture. Shenikra Asiya, which is called Asiya. When we're looking at that Shabbos, then Adam Kadmon is not part of the ascent because Adam Kadmon is above it. The Adam Kadmon that is so high, Shekoilol Abiyah, that includes Atzilus, Bri, Yatzir, and Asiya all as one, Bashva Echas, which means it's so much higher than Atzilus, Ulamaylam Aliyah Zud Shabbos. It's much higher than this elevation of Shabbos. But when it says in the verse that God, we say in Kiddush, we say both, that God is resting from all the work that He created, that's referring to a much higher retraction, which means God is going inward, much deeper, and elevating Himself even from that which He created, which in that level it includes even Adam Kadmon. That affects already Adam Kadmon as well, Ukanis Kalel, like we mentioned earlier. I'm Lakutei Torah Parshas Kedoshim. Look in Lakutei Torah Parshas Kedoshim al Pasuk Shabsosei. This is Lakutei Torah of the Arizal. Bei Shabsosei, the two Shabsosei, Hadar Ha'elyon, the higher Hadar. V'hu Yesod, the Ak. Yesod is called Hadar because Yesod is related to Hadar, like it says by Yosef. Yosef was was Yefei Tor, Yefei Mar, was very, very, very handsome. Because Yosef, we know, is Yesod. But the Hadar Elyon is the Yesod element of Adam Kadmon. Shehu Pnimius Adam Kadmon, which is the innermost of Adam Kadmon. Malchus of Adam Kadmon is considered the external of Adam Kadmon. And Yesod of Adam Kadmon, Hadar, is the Pnimius of Adam Kadmon. Alma de Shabsosei law, Zu Shayach B'Pnimius Adam Kadmon. So you see from this right teaching of the Arizal, and he says that when he speaks about the two Shabbos, he says Hadar Elyon. So you see that at least the higher Shabbos, the Shabsosei law, is affecting even the innermost of Adam Kadmon. I'm Pri Eitz Chaim Bagdam L'Shara Shabbos Perik Daled. Look in Arizal in the writings of the Pri Eitz Chaim in the portal of Shabbos, the 4th chapter. V'chein Oilin. He says these words. V'chein Oilin Kulon. All of them are ascend in Shabbos ad Adam Kadmon, all the way up to Adam Kadmon. You can read over there ad Adam Kadmon, meaning until Adam Kadmon, and not Adam Kadmon. But a lot of times the word ad is ad v'ad beklal. That when you say until this, it means up to this, including this. And there he says even stronger. He says Ada Matzala Elyon. Everything rises until the supernal emanator. So then for sure Adam Kadmon is included because it's rising all the way up to the emanator himself, which Adam Kadmon is already part of the emanation, not the emanator. Pidish Afila Arech, Kolan Etzal and Kulon, all these levels go up. But Tzarechim, Sefer Al Gugulim, Sof Perik Yitzayim, V'ayim B'mavay Sha'arim, Shar Gimel Chelik Beis, Seif Perik Tezvav. I'm sure if we would look up all these sources, we would be much, much smarter. In any case, so this ends the talk regarding the Shabsosei Tishmoiru, what it means you should observe my Shabbos, you should guard my Shabbos. But remember, we said that the verse says you should guard my Shabbos and my sanctuary, my holy temple, my sanctuary, you should fear. So what is that referring to? Pidish Mikdashai. So now this is the last chapter in the discourse. Mikdashai Tiro Pidish Mikdashai. What does it mean? Mikdashai Koyi ala Torah. That is referring to the Torah. Now Torah is a complete different energy than Shabbos. Shabbos is a suction. Shabbos is an inwardness where all the energies of creation are being pulled back into their source. Torah is a so it's an ascent. It's an ascending power. Everything is like returning higher and higher back to a level before it's contracted. Everything is moving to a higher state, to a place where it's freer, right? Torah is the opposite. God is descending, taking his godly light and formulating it into formulations. It's like Torah is similar to creation, where creation God is descending from non-definition into definition. It's only that in creation he's descending into definition, but to create something, which means to lessen the divine revelation. It's not about divine revelation, It's about creating a recipient, creating something. And in general, creations are created in a way that they conceal and they hide their creator. Torah is also a descent. It's like a teacher descending to a student. A teacher comes down, not pulling the student up. The teacher is descending, taking information and channeling it and simplifying it and bringing it down so that the student should be able to understand it. So this is the idea of taking something that doesn't have any words, finding words for it, finding sometimes metaphors and bringing it down into tiny little bits of information. So that's the way Torah works. It's a descent. So it's similar to the temple. What's the temple? The idea of a temple is that we have a physical edifice, a physical building, where God comes down to reveal himself in the physical. It's a descent, not an ascent. So therefore, the Torah is called my temple. Now, where do we see this, that the Torah is called my temple? I mean, we understand the logic behind it. But where do you see actually anywhere in Torah that it references the Beis Hamikdash as Torah as the temple? So he brings an interesting thing. The sages say that from when the temple was destroyed, God doesn't have any nesting ground. In the temple, this was God's base in the world. When we say God is everywhere, but a place where he can reveal himself. But when the temple was destroyed, there's no more place where he can reveal himself. We know that our places of worship, our synagogues, shuls, and study halls are a little temple. But primarily, what's the temple of God? It says, where does God reside? In the 4 cubits of Torah study. Wherever people sit and study halacha, they study the laws of the Torah, God descends. That's God's nesting place. So here you see clearly that the Torah is a temple. Pidish Mikdashai, it says my temple. Kayala Torah, it's referring to the Torah. Kamaim Razals, it says Shachar Beis Hamikdash, from when the temple was destroyed. God doesn't have any place in this world. The 4 cubits of halach. What's God's space on YouTube? There's big YouTube. Everybody's making shows on YouTube. I don't know, I'm saying on social media. Every guy. Right? This guy is doing political shows. This person is doing travel shows. This one is doing eating shows. This one is doing all kinds of whatever. Every kind of crazy. Everything is on, right? So where is God resting on? What's God's place on YouTube? This channel, as we study Torah. We're studying deep Torah over here. Here, this is God's place in YouTube. He's revealing himself through the Torah that we study. And not only this channel, but all the channels that teach Torah. That we give God also a space on social media. In any case, what makes then the Torah different than the Shabbos is the total opposite of Shabbos. In Shabbos, we are going out of vessels, we're going out of definitions, and we're going into the infinite. Like a person we discussed earlier, when a person does work, you invest yourself in something, and then when you go to rest, what do? You allow your energies that have been channeled down into specifics to return back into the greater pool of life, and that's why it feels so delicious, because you're coming out of all the investments when you invested yourself. And you're retrieving yourself back into yourself. So God is doing that. So we're moving up into the infinite. In Torah, it's God channeling. Channeling is the opposite. He's channeling his not downward. And that's why it's called internalized lights. When you're going into the infinite, you can't apprehend it, you can't understand it, you can dissolve in it, you can swim inside of it, you can lose yourself in it. That's why we said earlier it's an encompassing light. But Torah is that God is lowering, so it's meant to be grasped. That's why it's called internalizing light. That's why Torah a lot of times is called food, spiritual food, godly nourishment. Why? Because just like food, what do you do with food? How does it affect us by us eating it, assimilating it, integrating it until it becomes part of our body, and it becomes part of our bloodstream, and all the different nutrients go into the different parts. The calcium is absorbed by the bones, and so on and so forth, as the different parts go in, literally assimilate into the body. So too, when we study Torah, we're assimilating godly truths into our system. And that's why when it comes to Torah, it doesn't say you should observe it. It says my temple, which is referring to the Torah, Tira'u, you should fear. Why? Because Shabbos is so lofty that its holiness cannot be revealed to us. And when you're tapping something, but it's not really being revealed to you, you don't really fear it. You might be recognized that you're connecting something high, but to fear something, it has to be revealed. When it's revealed, it causes you to, and that's why what is the greatest time of fear that the Jewish people experienced fear was by the giving of the Torah. When God gave the Torah, which means it was complete revelation into their vessels, into their containers, it says the people stood from afar and they were shaking and quaking. They were terrified. Because fear is drawn. When there is revelation from up and close, that causes fear. Like it says, by the giving of the Torah, the people sweated, and they shook and they sweated, and they stood at a distance. Actually, when they went far, it was afterwards. They ran to the far because they needed to calm down. They couldn't, it was too much. The fear was so intense that they needed to rest a little bit. Because when they came so close to the revelation, it was too intense. And by the same was also by the splitting of the sea. Over there, it also describes an enormous revelation. It says, Vayar Yisrael, the Jewish people saw us, a Yad Agdola, the great hand of God. There as well, it says, Vayidu the people feared. Because where there is revelation, there's fear. That's why in the holy temple, you also saw God. When you went into the temple, you saw miracles. You sensed God's presence over there to the point that you could literally see it. It says that 3 times a year you should come to be seen and see. And that's why the temple is the biggest place of fear. Shabbos, and on Shabbos, Shu'ar Makiv. Shabbos, however, contrast that with Shabbos. Shu'ar Makiv, which is an encompassing light. Now, Tishmeru, it says you should observe it. Now, Shabbos one day will cause fear. That is the Shabbos in the future, when the encompassing light will also be revealed. It says it speaks of such a level of dread and fear that we will be running and looking. It says people will be running for caves to hide and try to find a cleft of a rock to be able to hide from the revelation. It will just be too intense. Not to scare anybody, but that's what it says. But then it explains, what does the verse say? My Shabbos you should observe, my temple you should fear. Ani Hashem, I am God. What is the idea? So it's coming to explain. You might say, Shabbos, I understand. Shabbos is God. We're getting to experience God's truth. Hashem as Hashem truly is, beyond all limitations. But Torah, the temple, this is already only a little ray of God that can come into creation. So why do I have to fear that? So the answer is, Ani, Hashem is explaining it by saying these 2 words, Ani Hashem, I am Hashem. What does that mean? Yud Kei Vav Kei, God's name, the Tetragrammaton, that's the name that God uses to reduce his light. First of all, the fact that it's a name. We discussed earlier that the letters of a name represent the only thing that's left over from the light is only the letters. In addition to that, the letters themselves imply a reduction. Yud means that God is Yud is a little point. That means that God is hiding and contracting and withdrawing all the light, and all that's left over is a tiny little point. And then from that Yud, but it's a point of Or Ein Sof, so it's too intense, so it's too much for us. That Yud needs to expand outward, and by expanding it in the Hey, which means in directions, it's actually weakening a little bit. Then it has to descend down, which is the Vav, means it's descending, and then finally it expands again, and then we can receive it. So Yud Kei Vav Kei represents a revelation. That's why Torah is called Torah's Hashem, Torah of Yud Kei Vav Kei, because Torah is God descending and revealing himself within the world, and it's coming through Yud Kei Vav Kei. Ani, however, the word Ani, first of all, Ani means I. So that's referring to God's very self, the infinite. Also, the words Ani, if you rearrange the letters, you have the word Ayin. Ayin means nothingness. which is implying the level of the divine that cannot be defined with any definitions. It's beyond the name. A name means it has a description. Ani means ayin, indescriptives. So in other words, we can say like this: Shabbos, the holiness of Shabbos is from Ani, from the ayin, from the nothingness, because it's a withdrawal back into the predefined state, pre-names, and Torah is Yud Kei Vav Kei, is God's name. So God is saying Ani Havaya. Don't think that the Yud Kei Vav Kei is something totally new. It's Ani. It's the entire God. It's Ani, who I am and what I am, as I am manifesting myself in a tiny little droplet. It's the DNA of I. That's the point. It's the same DNA of me, but yet in a way that you can handle it. So therefore you should fear it. Because don't think it's like because you can handle it, you might deduce from it that it's small change. It's not the real deal. It is. It's just God is making his inaccessible self accessible. That's the idea. I am Avaya, Pirish Ani. The word of the meaning of the word Ani is ayin, is the word nothingness. It's the same word of the word ayin, which is referring to Atzmas Orein Sof, the essence of the Orein Sof that is pre any sphera, attribute, and definition, and so forth. Which on that we call it nothing. Why? Because we can't wrap our minds on it. Not only that, our minds can't even latch onto it. And we're saying that level, who Havaya, he himself is the Yud Kei Vav Kei. And what is Havaya? Havaya, who Havaya is the light that settles down into vessels. Why? Because he says, take a look at the order of the letters. Ki Yud Simtzum, the Yud represents the contraction. That's the first point of revelation. In order for wisdom with Torah is the wisdom of God. In order for wisdom to come about from the infinite that's beyond wisdom, is only through a contraction. As we discussed earlier, what's left over is only one little dot. We discussed earlier that the letters that are left over, that we spoke about the Taf. But sometimes it's the Yud, which is the source of the Taf as well, just a little Yud, like we said earlier. And afterwards it expands, which is the Bina. It becomes broadened. So even this light that is illuminating in an internal way, it too comes from before the Tzimtzum. It's from the Or Ein Sof, from the infinite light. Why? It's like we discussed that when the Tzimtzum happened, what happened? When the initial contraction happened, so first it says God's light filled all possible space. Then in order to create the world, God carved out a hole. He created a space, a black hole, which means he removed his infinite revelation to the side and created a cavity, an absence, an empty space, a void. And into that's the Tzimtzum. And in that void are the traces of the letters that are left over. And then into that void, it reinserted a tiny little thread of light. It's called Kav, it's called a line. So, but where is that Kav coming from? It's coming from the Or Ein Sof that was before the Tzimtzum. So even though it's representing itself only in a narrow little thread, it's still the real light. It's of the substance of the Or Ein Sof. Which since it's a light, Sha'or Me'ein Amor, which the light is of the luminary. Always light of a luminary a light is similar to its source from where it is illuminating from. And therefore it's really one God, not two different things. And therefore, even though you might say it's kind of like already reduced, and therefore you can feel buddy with this light, it's saying, God forbid, and my temple, which means my revelation that I do into the temple or into the Torah, tira'u, you should fear. I'm at Kunei Zohar, Reish Tikun Chavdala, look into Kunei Zohar, I'm at Kazminat Tzimtzum, the Yudah Pasuk Mamzer Chodesh, Achrei, Aviyalei Kapar, okay. Efshaloimar, and we can now, based on this, we can also say, this will now give us explanation, why Shabbos, we find Shabbos being placed next to the temple. Because these represent the two emanations of God. One is Shabbos is the experience of God's of Hashem's infinite light, transcendent light, and temple is the God's immanence as he descends inward into creation. This will also explain why a lot of times the Torah puts Shabbos, the keep observance of Shabbos, next to and side by side with honoring your parents or fearing your parents. It says honor your father and your mother. And where is in the Ten Commandments, where is honor? Where is the mitzvah of honoring one's parents? It's the fifth commandment, and it comes after the fourth commandment, which is keeping Shabbos. So you see they're side by side. And there's another in Parshas Kedoshim in Leviticus. Over there it says, Ish imay va'aviv tiro. Every person, his father and his mother, he should fear. Shabsosei tishmor, and observe my Shabbos. So again, we find Shabbos. This time, Shabbos comes after the father and mother. Why are these two always hugging the 613 commandments? What's the relationship between the two? Why is honoring parents or fearing the parents or respecting the parents always related to keeping Shabbos? Now we understand, because they represent these two dynamics which are attached to each other. Why? What does father and mother have to do that? Because the indwelling light of God, what he called the temple, is the energy of Hashem that comes down into the sefirot, into the attributes. What is the first two attributes? Chachma and Bina. Wisdom and understanding. Wisdom and understanding are called father and mother, the supernal father and mother. So Shabbos is keter, is like encompassing lights, is beyond father and mother. And father and mother you should fear, which is Chachma and Bina. It's keeping the two together. This is the connection of Kabbalah, honor your father and your mother. To remember the day of Shabbos, that's why this is number 4. And this is number 5 in the 10 Commandments. The same as also. Parshas Kedoshim, Ish imay v'aviv tiro, one man, his father and his mother, you should fear. Shabsosei tishmor, my Shabbos is you should observe. The Parshas Kedoshim, Daf Pei Beis. It's similar to what it says in Zohar. Parshas Kedoshim. And Daf Pei Beis Amud Aleph. V'do ihu Titus Hashem. This is the Torah of the Haggadah. V'do ihu kibud ha'aba ve'ima. The Torah, there the Zohar says that honoring parents really is the same idea of the Torah. Honoring the Torah. Why? Because Torah and father and mother are the same idea. And simply, even on a simple level, our parents are educators. They educate us. They're the first educators in our life on our parents, for good or for bad, but they're our educators. And what does Torah do? It educates us. And we find actually that the Torah is referred to, there are 2 parts of Torah, the written Torah and the oral Torah, and they're actually called our father and mother. The written Torah is called father, and the oral Torah is called mother. So you see, it's the same idea. The written Torah is called the rebuke of your father. And the oral Torah, the Torah, the teachings, imecha, of your mother. And Torah is the internal light. Shabbos or makif. And Shabbos is the encompassing light. And being that the encompassing and indwelling light are really 2 levels that are connected to each other, because one emanates from the other. And not only that, they're all really one. And as we said earlier, now this that we just say, that the Torah, now he's going to give more of a esoteric explanation to the idea that the Torah is called my temple. Other than the fact that we find in the Mishnah that God, in the Talmud, where it says that when the temple was destroyed, God's dwelling place is in Torah. So you see, the Torah is a temple. But now he's going to explain it a little better. Why is that? And this is as it says in the book of Tanya, Perek Nun Beis. The Talmud is drawn, Talmud stems from, over there in Tanya, the end of the first part of Tanya, chapter 52. There are 53 chapters in the first part of Tanya. This is the chapter 52. Over there he discusses where the various different parts of Torah emanate from. So he says Talmud, which is the logic of the laws, stems from the world of intelligence. Mishnah, which is not the logic of the laws, but just the laws themselves. Mishnah preceded the Talmud. Mishnah is the backbone of the Talmud. In Mishnah, you have the dry laws. What, yeah, what, no. What is kosher, what's not kosher, all the laws. The Talmud comes and bases on the Mishnah, and every statement of the Mishnah, you have a few pages of Talmud that come to extrapolate and explain the reasoning behind it. Where do we derive it from? How do we know it? So on and so forth. So Talmud is the intelligence of the Mishnah. What the Mishnah is the law itself. What is the law? All the laws are coming from God's emotions. What he likes, what he doesn't like. These are the midot. That's why there are 6 orders of Mishnah, because there are 6 divine emotions. So therefore he says Talmud comes from the world of Beriah, which is remember we learned this, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah. There's our physical lower world, the world of completion. And there is the world of formation, which is the world of the emotions, and which is the world of the angels, and the world of emotions. The world of, called the world of creation, which is in a very intelligent realm. Okay? Our intelligence down here is but a little nothing compared to the intelligence that is in that higher realm. So it says that the Talmud originates in the world of Bria. The Mishnah originates in the world of Yetzirah. Now, when we say the Talmud originates in the world of Bria, and which aspect of the world of Bria are we talking about? So it says from the chamber, from the Holy of Holies, from the Heichal Kache Kache. In every world, there is a center, a headquarters. The headquarters of that world is the temple in the world. Like right now, the Temple Mount is the headquarters of the physical world. Actually, it says there is a stone there that's from that stone, all of the physical world was created. That's the bedrock of existence, because that's the root. And that's where the holiness, and that's where most of the divine energy flows to the universe, is through the temple, and in the temple itself, the Holy of Holies, right by the ark. So just like it is in the physical, it exists also in the metaphysical. In every world, the deepest, highest place of the world is the temple of that world, and within the temple, the Holy of Holies of that world. So what's the Holy of Holies of the world of Bria? And the Talmud comes from that place. So what's the Holy of Holies in the world of Bria? It's the first attributes of the world of Bria, the intellectual attributes of the world of Bria. In each world, there are 10 attributes, divine attributes, which emanate that world. So, and the first attributes are intellectual ones. So it's actually, he says, 4 attributes. Das, Das, Bina, Chachma, and Keser. Keser, Chachma, Bina, Das. Of, like the tefillin have 4 boxes, because it's four, not just 4 boxes, 4 Keser, Chachma, Bina, Das. Of the world of Bria. That's called the chamber of the Holy of Holies. And that's the chamber. Who dwells in the chamber? Hashem. What level are we talking about? So the Shekhinah from the higher world, from the world of Atzilus, is the one who resides in Keser Chachma Bina Das of Bria, in the holy chamber, in the Holy of Holies. What's called Shekhinah of the world of Atzilus? The lowest attribute, which is Malchus, the attribute of Malchus of Atzilus, that's the dwelling light that dwells in Keser Chachma Bina and Das of Bria. And that's where the Talmud comes from. That means you can see clearly that means that the Talmud is the dwelling place for the Shekhinah of Atzilus, the Shekhinah, the Malchus of Atzilus, which is pure divinity, to dwell in it. And that's why it's called the Mikdash, the place where God reveals himself. It's the brains of the world. So again, I know, yeah, Shatalma Nimshach Meichel Kache Kadashim from the chamber of the Holy of Holies, the Bria, the world of Bria. Shaboy Mislabish, which in it is enclosed, Malchus Datzilus, the Malchut element of the world of Atzilus. Elachei Nikra Or Pnimi, and that's why it's called an indwelling light, just like inside a person's brain, you have internalized revelations of the soul or consciousness in our brain. And it's referring to the what's the or pnimi, what's the internal light? It's the atzilus energy, hanimshach mislabish, the emanation energy. It's still higher than a creation. It's still divine. Hanimshach that extends itself, umislabish, and encloses itself, bibria in the world of creation. Avol, that's the way it is in Torah. Torah is Atzilus descending to express itself in the lower world, in Bria, in the brain of Bria. What's Shabbos? Shabbos is the opposite. The world of Bria ascends into Atzilus. Not Atzilus revelation emanates and reveals itself in a lower place, but that the lower world, the world of Bria, ascends. Avol Shabbos, Bria Oila. And that's why it's called an encompassing light, because it's ascending into a vast, expansive light that is bigger than it. The same is also the higher Shabbos. There it's the Bria, the general Bria. That's Adam Kadmon ascends into the primordial light before Atzilus, before the Tzimtzum. But they're all one. Here it's in a state of transcendence. Here it's in a state of contraction, but it's one God, obviously. Which goes to Eitz Chaim, like it says in Eitz Chaim, Shar Kisei HaKavod, the Heichel Kodesh Kadashim, that the Heichel, the chamber of the Holy of Holies, who Keser Chachma Bina Das, the Bria, is the Keser Chachma Bina, the crown, the wisdom, the understanding, and the knowledge of the world of Bria. That's called the chamber of the Holy of Holies. What's its soul? The soul that of this chamber are the lights that shine mikeser chachma bina da atzilus, from above, from keser chachma bina da atzilus. So you see from here that even in the most lowest descent of the light, it's really emanations of the keser chachma bina of das that are from atzilus, not from bria, from way above. What Shkasa Makamachar has stated elsewhere. Now, based on this, we can explain the Inyan to Kanto Shabbos. Once we've had all this information of how powerful Shabbos is, now he's going to go back to Shabbos. Now he's not talking anymore about temple, based on Migdash Torah, he's going back to Shabbos. He says now we'll understand, since Shabbos is this elevation, it's a tshuva experience, it's going up, 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 back into the infinite light. We'll understand why in the prayer of Shabbos, in the additional Amida prayer that we say on Shabbos, which is the Musaf prayer. Usually there's 3 prayers every day. On Shabbos, we add a 4th prayer called Musaf. And Musaf actually means addition. And it corresponds to the additional sacrifices that we offered in the temple on Shabbos. But as he's going to explain now, the reason of this prayer is because when we ascend higher into higher levels, there is much more, there's added energy filling our souls, our vessels. It's primarily encompassing us, but we become filled with so much extra light, so much of a greater revelation. That's called the Musaf, addition. But during that prayer, the way the Shemona Esrei is set up, after the 3 blessings that are always the same by every Amida blessing, you go into the crux of it, the extra blessing of Shabbos. It starts with the words Tikanto Shabbos Ratzisa Karbanosel, which stands for you've established Shabbos. Tikanto, you've said it, you've either established it or you've you've fortified it. Rotzisa Kabbalah, you willed its sacrifices. Now, if you take a look at the way these words are set up, it's working by the order of the alphabet. It's following the order of the alphabet. Like if you would have 4 words, one beginning with an A, the next one with a B, the next one with a C, and the next one with a D. Here you're going through the order of the alphabet, but in the reverse order. You're starting from Taf, the last letter, and you're going to Shin. Tikanta starts with Taf. Shabbos is Shin. Rotzisa is Reish. Karbanisel is Kuf. So you're working as if you're reading the alphabet backwards. There must be a deep reason for why this is. We already discussed this in the first class. I already mentioned that. What's going on over here? Since Shabbos, God is pulling us back into himself. What did we learn? That when the infinite light needs to or wanted to create and to bring about existence, it had to first cancel the infinite light, hide it, because we in the presence of God's true existence, we would dissolve instantly. We wouldn't be who we are at all. We couldn't possibly be an entity in that truth. That had to be blocked from us entirely. All that was left over were letters. And if you remember, we said that in the letters themselves, there are initial letters, and those letters are still too intense, too much light in them. So the letters stack up one after another, starting with Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet. Finally, you get to the last letter, which is the Taf. And Taf is actually becomes the most diluted energy of God in the Taf. And then the Taf becomes the source of all the energies for the cosmos. So, and therefore, anything from the ceiling of the creations is that Taf. No one experiences anything beyond that Taf. Shabbos, however, when God unlocks the door and invites us back in, we have to move in through where? We have to go first through the Taf, and then into the Shin, and then into the Reish, and then into the Kuf, and then back until we get to the Aleph. So we're moving our way outward, back through the letters. Amazing. And that's the idea why we do it by Musaf, because that's when we get the added light of Shabbos, the addition of Shabbos. We're traveling inward from the back of the letters, back inward into the Orid. So this is a wild idea. Okay. So let's see over here. Shabbos that is a Musaf. It says in from the writings of the Ari, Shara Shabbos Perikha. That it is set up, I'll say there Tashrak. It is set up on the order of the letters, but going from the back to the front. This represents that on Shabbos there's an illumination of these 22 letters. We're saying now, we're actually tapping these essential primordial letters. We're not talking about the letters much later down. We're talking about the letters in its highest state, Hama'irin, which reveal themselves b'moichi in the supernal mind. That means mitata le'ela, but the way these letters reveal themselves is from the bottom up. That means first the Taf reveals itself in the supernal mind. Supernal mind over here doesn't mean God's mind. The supernal mind means the whole cosmic system, the brain of creation, including the divine, the levels of divinity that are part already of the cosmic order. So the brain of it starts to reveal and experience these letters, these higher letters. Beside Mashakasa Bezoyar, Taf, based on the secret of what it says in the Zohar, Taf, the letter Taf, which is the last letter, Rashim Rishimu, marks a marker la'atik yoimim for the Ancient of Days. That means the Ancient of Days is receiving from the Taf. So now when the Ancient of Days is ascending higher, it first opens up the Taf to it. It illuminates the Taf, then much higher than that, the Shin, and higher. The Leis Tichvase, because there's no like him. Look also regarding the letters in Ramaz. Ramosh is a Kusi Resh Parshas Vayikra. And they fly, whatever that means, through the avir, through the air. This means the added light. Ella oisios, to the letters. Me'avira the erech anpin, from the ear of erech anpin. What this means exactly in this context, I don't know. And similar to that, we can say over here, Tashrak. This is the idea of the Tav Shin Reish Kuf, of the order, Musaf, which is in Musaf, Tosefes, or the added lights. Ella Oisies, to the letters. Sheheim Bizun. Now, this is like this. Yes, we are moving through these higher letters into the letters further, but it also means that these higher letters are illuminating these essential letters that are the letters of the Or Ein Sof. See, letters exist on all levels of existence because everything is based on a system of speech, thought and speech of letters. All energies are emanated through letters. So there are the letters of the primordial infinite light. That's what he discussed earlier, is what's left over after the initial contraction is all there is a letter. Ultimately, only the letter Tav. But then later on in creation, every single dimension of creation, as it passes energy from influencer to influenced, from teacher to student, in the spiritual, higher, divine realms, it's all working through communication, through letters. And what's happening is, and the world, our physical world, is created with DNA, with these godly letters. What's happening on Shabbos is, because there is this elevation, every letter of letters, every level of letters is infused with higher letters. It's all tapping. It's like everything is moving back into higher letters. So that means that there's added light, Allah Oisias, to the letters of creation. Shehem Bizun. Now, what we said earlier, that the main Shabbos, on the lowest, most connected to us, is the Friday night Shabbos, which is in Malchus, and the Shabbos day Shabbos, which is in the Zeir Anpin, in the 6 emotions. There are letters over there that actually in the Torah, when you see in the Torah middle-sized letters, average letters, those are the letters of the Zeir Anpin, which are the six attributes of God. When you see in the Torah sometimes a tiny letter, like in the word Vayikra, there's a small aleph, the letters are reduced. Those are the letters of Malchus, which are the letters of creation. The letters of creation are tiny letters, small letters. Even though when God said it in Bereshis, you don't see that they're small letters, they're regular letters, but the letters of creation are really small letters because they're the letters of Malchus. The letters of the Torah are average letters. Sometimes there's a large letter, they come from Bina. So what he's saying is that on Shabbos, these letters, whether in Malchus, which are the small letters, or the medium-sized letters, the average letters, are illuminated with much higher light. Ki asvin beinin and bezav, asvin dinim and Malchus. And now, the Musaf Shabbos, on the Musaf of Shabbos, Nimshach lahem, it is drawn to them, Toisvis or new light, Maha Keser, from the crown. Because again, everything is moving upward, so there's an expansion of energies at every level. Therefore, where is it all coming from? All this added light, it's all coming from the Malchut element of Adam Kadmon, because the Malchus of Adam Kadmon is we said earlier, is the letter Taf, which emanates. Again, there was a letter Taf above Adam Kadmon, and there's a letter Taf from Adam Kadmon that emanates further. Shanasa al Yadai, Vizahu Taf Rashim Neshimu. That the Taf of Adam Kadmon becomes the marker for Atik Yom, what we call the level of Atik Yom Keser. So but now there is added lights in all these levels. That means it's all plugging into the Taf. That's why we start with the Taf. Soon he's going to explain it a little clearer that we're talking about an inward journey from the Taf into the Shin. Yeah. Based on what we said, that on Shabbos there's elevations. Even higher than Keser. Even higher than Adam Kadmon, Adrom Amaylis, exalted higher and higher. Shegam Adam Kadmon Oila Ba'orin Sof, that even Adam Kadmon rises into the Orin Sof Baruch Hu. Him came a move, and it's understood on its own. Shegam B'zeh Yisparish Gam Kinning and Anal. We have to take the whole idea of Tashrak, and we have of Tav Shin Reish Kuf, and apply it even to Adam Kadmon as well. Al Derech Mashakasev Arizal, like what the Arizal says, Shah Taf, that the Taf, not only in the Zohar it says that the Taf of Adam Kadmon becomes the primordial energy for Atik Yom, for the Ancient of Days. But the Arizal says that the same is Adam Kadmon itself is receiving from the last letter of the Matzal Elyon of the supernal emanator. It's the last level of the emanator, which is the Orein Sof before the Tzimtzum. Asher he had Sila HaKoil. This letter Taf is literally what contains the energy of the entire cosmic order. Sefer Emek HaMelech, and in Sefer Emek HaMelech Shara Sheni Perek Zayin, Chasev Gamkein, he also says Be'inyan HaTaf. Yeah, doesn't say what, but now we said earlier, we explained earlier on the verse, God creates holiness. Holiness is Chachma. Chachma is called holy. And we learned that Chachma is holy, but anything from Chachma and onward, and all the creatures that come from Chachma, and Chachma exists on the highest of levels, but yet it's only derived from this Taf, which is only God's name, and therefore Yishtabach Shimcha, when they praise, they're praising only His name because they don't know past the name. Sheshavas Adam Kadmon, that they're coming about of Adam Kadmon, primordial man. And even the Chachma, there is a level of Chachma that's above Adam Kadmon. All of that, is only from the trace of the letters, which was remained after the contraction. And after the light departed. Shabbos and on Shabbos, and usually it's holding strong. We can never bypass that. Shabbos on Shabbos is this suction. Who Aliyas Adam Kadmon is pulled inward. The Orein Sof, into the Orein Sof. Shumash and Estalik, it goes literally into the Orein Sof that was departed in order to create the black hole. It returned into its concealment. Now that Adam Kadmon is elevated past that barrier, that concealed light is now illuminated in Adam Kadmon, because Adam Kadmon has now broken out of its contraction and gone into this expansion of Orein Sof. So that's the way it works on Shabbos. It's not in a way where a teacher is lowering himself down to the student. It's like the teacher sucking the student into his mind. That the student now I'll imagine that the student gets elevated into the mind of the teacher and experiences all the illumination that's in the teacher's head. Not as an independent being outside of the teacher, but being included in the teacher's mind. That's what's happening to all of us on Shabbos. We're all going into our source, and over there experiencing the expansive light. Obviously, today's days, we as human beings can't feel it, so it's encompassing. It's happening, but we're not feeling it. But when in the days of Mashiach, we will feel that Shabbos light. And that's why this elevation, that's why this elevation happens through the Taf, because the Taf was the last level where everything contracted down and where we were all emanated from. So when we retrace our steps, we have to retrace our steps through the steps that we were emanated from. We have to go back. So we first encounter the Taf, and from the Taf, we move our way onward. Like we said before from Mary's. And that's why we follow this order, Tav Shin Reish Kuf, the Takanta Shabbos. And when do we say it? B'musaf, only by the Musaf prayer. Musaf Shabbos, because the Musaf means addition. This represents the addition of holiness of every holy day. Whenever there's a holy day when we pray Musaf, it's because at that time is when the added holiness manifests. That's why it says, for example, on Shavuos, the Baal Shem Tov gave instruction that people should try not to talk anything from the beginning of Shavuot night until after the prayer of Musaf, and especially when we say Keter. Because when we say Keser by Musaf, that's when the lights, the whole giving of the Torah and all the lights of Shuas are then revealed during Keser. Because Musaf is always the time of that revelation. When Shekaz B'Par, there's Be'erech HaKinuyim, Be'erech Musaf. This is the meaning that the elevation of Shabbos in its Shabbos, there's a verse that says the elevation, simply it's referring to the sacrifices of Shabbos, the burnt offering of Shabbos. You should do every Shabbos. The deeper meaning is that Oila Shabbos, there's an elevation of Shabbos, and B'Shabbatoi, then Shabbos itself is elevated. Shabbos atzmai Oila B'Shabbatoi. That means the lower Shabbos is elevated into the higher Shabbos. And the elevation goes all the way up to without an end, to the Ein Sof. To understand oid inyan shaykhis b'chinas oisius b'orein soif. Now to understand a little better, what kind of letters are we talking about? This whole idea is based on that we are letters in the Orein Sof, in the infinite light. The infinite light, we would say, doesn't have any relationship to anything. How can you identify letters over there? It's explained elsewhere in the Maimer Tachas Hashalei Avadet. The difference between light and Shefa. Shefa means influence, or means light. And over there, he questions the usage of the earlier Kabbalists used to talk about God's influence, and they would use the term Shefa. The latter Kabbalists changed, and the Arizal, and they don't use anymore the word Shefa, they use the word Or. So it's explained that on purpose they changed the terminology. Because Shefa means a type of influence in which the substance of the influencer is contained in the influence. Or light doesn't contain any of the substance of the luminary. The rays of the sun don't drain the sun. The sun doesn't get drained by its rays. Because the light doesn't have any of the substance of it. If the sun would give off Shefa, then the sun would shine out itself. But Shefa means you're giving. It's like a teacher teaching. It's like, how long can you teach? You teach for 2 hours. Okay, we have long classes, but even that isn't end. Then you have no energy because you're like given of your substance, given of yourself. Or it's almost like you're not even occupied in it. It's like a person studying themselves, not aware that anybody's even listening to them. So light, the words are like emanation. It's not like they're giving. There's no intentional giving. It's just an emanation. It's like light emanating. So we use that term for God to emphasize how all the influences that's coming doesn't have anything of the substance of the emanator, right? Sha'ara, because the idea of an illumination, it's not lacking anything, bahamakar in the source. From which this has been drawn. So similar to the idea of light, the same is with letters. Letters of the soul, letters of a person. Letters of a person. Letters of a person, meaning the person that we all produce letters. Thoughts and speech is letters. So we find an interesting thing. We can think and think and think, which we all do that we should do all the time. We're thinking. We're producing. Our mind is constantly producing words. Now, physically, we drain ourselves. The person doesn't live forever, fine. But the soul that continues on after is continuously thinking also. The soul is a conscious being, thinking. How many letters can a soul create? Does it have a certain reserve of words, of letters, as much as it has, and then it kind of ran out of words? No. Letters can come from the soul forever and ever and ever without the soul becoming even one bit depleted. Because letters are like light, which light doesn't deplete the source. So when we want to use above the Orein Sof, when we want to indicate a form of an emanation that's coming from him, and that's not depleting the source, that doesn't have anything of the substance, we refer to Or, the letters. And we say all of creation is only letters. It doesn't have any, it's not depleting God in any way. It's nothing to God. And that's the letters. But the point over here is that we go beyond the letters. As a result of Torah and mitzvahs, we actually latch onto the substance. Shabbos brings us into the substance of God, beyond the letters. The letters of thought and speech. That's in a person. Is only a ration that is drawn from a person's soul and one's neshama. The spiritual energy of words is a type of illumination of like a ray of light, but it does not in any way deplete the soul. they do not occupy any space, which means they don't have any substantial value. It doesn't change and deplete the soul at all, based on how much thoughts you think. In case a soul is capable of thinking literally limitless thoughts. This rays that emanate from the Ein Sof Baruch Hu to create the worlds, in all the world, they don't have even one cell, so to speak, of God's very self. It's just a ray. It's just a ispashtus, and even if God was to create endless galaxies, worlds, and universes, it's like just thoughts. It doesn't have any substance. And they're all nothing. They don't have a piece of him, so to speak. He doesn't change at all by creating them. I have not changed. You are exactly the same before you created the world and after you created the world. That's why we call them letters, because letters have the same feature that they do not drain. A person's emotions do drain you, because your emotions are you. Your intelligence is of substance of self, but not the letters. The letters have that external are just rays. And this is also when he speaks, when the Arizal speaks about the letters that were left over from the Or Ein Sof after the Tzimtzum, which are called the Rishimu. He says over there that in the last level of the emanator. What does it mean, the last level of the emanator? That's where the letters are, and the letter Taf is the last of the last. What does that mean? Even in this ray, which is the source of all of existence, right? Which is Yesh Kama Bechinos. Even in the world of letters, in the world of emanations, of radiance, which doesn't have anything of the substance, in it itself, there is many levels. And the creation comes from the most neither of that level. When I say the creation, we mean the entire cosmic order. Where do we find that in letters itself, there is levels? You see it in a human being. We just said that thoughts and speech are letters. But we know that there are certain letters, which means certain words, which are very close to our inner being. When we're thinking them, we're really there. There's a deep side of ourselves kind of like connected to these thoughts. And then there is like very, very distant, like loose thoughts that were just kind of relaxed and we're daydreaming, we're halfway thinking. It's like, we don't even remember what we thought a minute ago. Not too important. And there are letters that we're thinking about our problem that's really bothering us. These letters are deep. You see, there are layers within this, the idea of thought in general being the nothing of ourselves. Yet even in that, there is inner and outer. And creation comes from the most external of it. There is just a light thought. It's considered external. Regard a deeper thought. Which is called internal. And the worlds, they come from the last level of the ray and the thought. But the Jewish souls come from the innermost of the thought. Come from the inner deepest thought. But yet, it's still thought, which is still nothing. Through Torah and mitzvahs and through being born into this world and coming down here and going through the challenges of darkness and difficulties, that is what enables our souls to move past the letters and move into the substance of God. However, all levels of thought, the inner and the outer, that his thoughts are utterly different than our thoughts. When we are thinking something, we are contained in that thought. It's not like a thought is happening and we're emanating thoughts, and it's not kind of, you can't think two things in one time. So if you're thinking something, you're fully vested in that thought. By God, when he's thinking something, it's not like he's conscious and he's now contained in that thought. Thoughts are emanations of him, and the thinking is happening, and yet he's totally outside of it. He's not impacted by that thought at all. And that's why he's not changing in the creation at all. So does he know what's going on? Of course he knows. He's the whole energy of what's going on, but at the same time, he's utterly above it. Mashak and Etzl Yisbarach, which isn't the case by him. She'ena machshava mal bishasai. His thought is not encompassing him. It's not enclothing him. And God forbid it's not encompassing him. He's exalted and elevated from it. And he's holy and separated. Which is related to this week. With this we conclude this amazing discourse. Shabsosei. And we conclude.